now we're going to get to World War II, which is obviously clearly a rupture point. But here your argument is actually, I thought, really interesting, because I guess the traditional stereotypical view is that the decisive moment is Pearl Harbor. The way it's often told is the United States was sort of obviously keeping an eye on what was going on in Europe, but was sort of slumbering. And all of a sudden, this surprise attack by the Japanese, which was supposedly totally unanticipated, brought us to make us realize that the oceans were no longer going to protect us. And that's why we had to take on this more muscular international role. But you argue that Pearl Harbor merely ratified a set of intellectual and policy transformations, which had actually been in the work for 18 months before then. Tell us about what happened 18 months before Pearl Harbor and what the evolution of thinking in the United States was between then and Pearl Harbor.
So there was another international event that was incredibly important, and that was the fall of France, the conquest of France completely by Nazi Germany in a span of just 6 weeks in May and June of 1940. It's not something that has a serious role in American popular memory today, but that is what really surprised, shocked international observers, because the French had the strongest army at the time. And it seemed for many months that Nazi Germany, in partnership soon thereafter with Italy, and then a little bit further thereafter by September with Japan, the Axis powers were going to be the dominant powers in Europe and Asia. And this specter of an Axis-led world, at least in Europe and Asia, was something that American foreign policy elites didn't expect, first of all, to happen. And it confronted them with a new reality. If totalitarian powers dominated Europe and Asia, what did that mean for the United States? It seemed to mean, in American nationalist and internationalist terms, that a choice had to be made. Either the United States had to maintain its traditional aversion to military entanglements in the old world at the price of losing some of its aspirations to have a world gradually emerging along American lines, of being able to have basically liberal American style intercourse, commerce, trade, law around the world. It seemed like you could have one or the other to many Americans. And so that's where we see a really sharp divergence emerge that isn't just, or maybe even centrally, about whether the United States should enter World War II at that time, but it's really about what role in general should America play in the world. Did it care enough about the fate of Europe and Asia that it should make military commitments to ensure a favorable balance of power in Europe and Asia, which meant completely breaching its aversion to entanglements in Europe and Asia? Or, and this was the proposal of the people who eventually gathered under the banner of America First, should it defend the entire Western Hemisphere? No isolationism there. That's a very expansive region, obviously, just in military terms, right? Which everyone pretty much agreed that would be sufficient to ensure the territorial security of the United States in North America. It would deny a foothold to any outside power from which they could plausibly invade the United States, right? And it also was pretty good in terms of preserving the prosperity of the American economy, which was quite inward looking, especially after the Great Depression. Or was that not enough? Should it go beyond and breach the non-entanglement position? So that's the fissure that opens up. And there's a whole set of American elites who start to plan the shape of things to come. They actually got going soon after the war in Europe broke out. But after the fall of France, they completely reorient all the plans that they were making. And by the fall of 1940 and into 1941, they are coming up with really ambitious schemes by which the United States, now believing that it has a vital stake in the balance of power in Europe and Asia, should become the dominant power and not just, defeat the Axis powers, but play a militarily dominant role in something like the perpetual future. Because if it was possible for the Axis powers to attain dominance in this instance, it might well happen again, and it'd be better to nip such an attempt in the bud.